Hello, I'm John Kennedy and welcome to this session on warm-ups. I hope you're all having a great time at this virtual ISB convention, and I hope you have your basses with you. If you don't, that's fine too, but this will be a session with lots of playing. So one way to be able to do that well is to make sure that you're listening to this in an earbud so that you can hear yourself and hear what we're doing here at the same time. So I've always had a couple fundamental questions about warm-ups in general. First of all, why do they call them warm-ups? And second of all, what are we trying to warm up? And over the years I've come to different conclusions about that as my career has moved along. And where I've landed is, for the first question, I think my answer is I don't know. And for the second question, it's everything. So let's narrow that down just a little bit. Why are they called warm-ups? I don't know, because in fact what I've found is that what I do that is generally considered a warm-up is a fundamental part of my overall practicing. It's not something I do before I practice. It's not something that I do to prepare myself for actual practicing. It is in fact the actual practicing. At the same time, it's something that I make sure I do at the beginning of my practicing, or as the first section of my practicing, so that everything else that I do is informed by what happens in these warm-ups. And we're going to work on 3 fundamental warm-ups today. There are many, many ways to do fundamental technical work on the bass. Many, many fine teachers and performers have introduced wonderful warm-up routines. This is not a session in which I'm saying these are the best. This is a session where I'm saying these are the warm-ups that I use the most. And I'd like to share them with you from the standpoint of they work for me. And if you have other things that you do that you use in your practicing, please continue to use them and take this as things that you might add, or they may be things that you already are aware of or use currently. So what is it that we're trying to warm up? In my experience, the most important thing that I can do to move from whatever else my day includes to that portion of the day at which I'm focused at the bass is to help my ear recover from the audio assaults of the day. At any time during your day, just stop and be still for a moment and listen to how many sounds are happening in your environment, and how many of those sounds are often chaotic or loud or random in ways that are not the sort of sounds that your ear wants to be able to focus on to create music. Sometimes they're industrial, sometimes they're in other ways mechanical, sometimes they're musical, but coming from any one of your number of devices where your music might come from at any level of technical sound quality that may or may not be helpful in protecting and comforting your ears. So refocusing my ears is the number one task at the beginning of my practicing. Next, and at the same time, I want to connect to my core tone. Whatever you consider to be the sound of your bass, that is your central go-to beautiful tone. You want to connect to that. You want to bring your body and your ears and your awareness to that sound. And then we want to be able to connect to listening, moving, and the mental patterns that are involved in creating music. So the routines that I use are often somewhat meditative, in the sense of listening very carefully, moving slowly, opening up physically, opening up our ears, opening up perception, and opening up my ability to connect to my sound. So let's explore one of these warm-up activities. This one is almost universally known as the vomit drill, from the mind and hands of Gary Carr. I learned it from several of Gary's students who have led me to a lot of understandings about sound and my connection to my bow, and my connection to relaxation, and my connection to the instrument. So a vomit drill, as a quick introduction, is you start on any note. We're going to start on the note A on the G string, and I'm going to play this A with the open D. I do doing vomit drills always as a double stop for a couple reasons that I'll get into. And it's a chromatic exercise, gently sliding from the A, half step by half step, up a chromatic scale and coming back down. First finger on the A to a second finger on each successive note, and then back to the first finger, slurring in each direction. And so forth. Here are the fundamental things that I pay attention to when I'm doing a vomit drill. Keeping my bow relaxed and moving at a consistent bow speed. That the fact of sliding my left hand doesn't change my bow velocity. So that the bow speed in the first note and during the glissando and the second note is all the same as our goal, and the same coming back down. No matter how long the shift is. All right? And the one of the ways of noticing that is using the sound of that open D is that staying consistent even though the note on the G string is moving and my left arm is moving, so that you're hearing this. Even though you're playing this. You'll immediately hear if your bow speed changes here on the open D. As we do this exercise, your left arm is working to remain relaxed, unsqueezing, and flowing, so that as you move, your connection to the string stays consistent without causing bass balance problems. That's the most common challenge when you're starting, besides keeping the bow at a consistent speed. That's the most common challenge I've seen when someone is starting to learn vomit drills, is that as they move past the neck block, their connection to the bass has to change. And your goal is that as you slide, your bass balance doesn't have to change. And there are many ways to accomplish that, depending on whether you're sitting or standing, angled or not. And so I encourage you to focus a lot on keeping your bass balance, such that your left hand is not involved in trying to hold the bass in its position so that it can move freely. We're going to do a vomit drill now with one of my students, Elizabeth, and you will be able to watch both of us as we move through an entire 2-octave chromatic scale up and down. I invite you to join and use this time to really pay attention to all the things that we just talked about. Letting your ears open up, letting your body relax, letting your bow and your core sound ring through, letting all your motions be smooth and relaxed.
Do you want to do all the way up to high?
Correct. The next warm-up I'd like to share with you is one of many possible ways to work with scales. I call these velocity scales not because they start fast, but because they do end up quite fast. This is an exercise in which you use the repetitive playing of a single scale to be able to very much focus on the pitch, the tonality of the scale, the connection to your bow, because throughout this scale you use exactly the same bow stroke, whether you're playing slow, medium, or fast. And it starts with whole notes, playing single tones, and for this example we're going to use an A major scale. It starts playing whole notes. After you've played the entire 3-octave scale up and down in whole notes, you come back down and you're getting to the bottom of the scale, you're playing the B, and then you'll continue right on playing half notes, slurring 2. And you'll go back up the scale 3 octaves and back down, always slurring 2 notes. When you're slurring 2 notes, when you get to the bottom of the scale, you're going up bow. When you get back, you'll be playing, and you'll be on an up bow. So I do that cycle at half notes a second time, at which point you're then on the down bow at the bottom of the scale. You've just played the half note scale twice. It's only taken the same amount of time as playing the whole note scale one time. Because you're playing half notes. Your bow is still using 4 beats per bow. 2, 3, 4. And it should be using approximately the same amount of bow every single time as when you were playing the whole notes. When you get to the bottom of the half note scale the second time, quarter notes, slurring 4. Continuing 3 octaves up, 3 octaves back down. As you might expect, in order for your bow to end up on a down bow on the final note, on the A, you have to go through this scale 4 times. Again, you're using the same bow stroke as you did with the whole note, but you're playing 4 notes per bow. You go through the cycle 4 times, and when you get to the 4th time, you'll be coming down and you'll be on a down bow, and we start 8th notes, 8 to a bow. And you play the whole scale, slurring 8. And guess what? You have to play it 8 times to end up at the end of the exercise here. So you play the whole notes once, the half notes twice, the quarter notes 4 times, and the 8th notes 8 times. The entire exercise takes about 9 minutes to play. You're playing the same scale with the same fingering, with the same motion of the bow the whole time. I encourage you to use a scale fingering that is consistent, that is the same going up and down the scale. I use, once I get to the G string, I use open strings on the lower, at the beginning of the scale. I use pairs of notes all the way up the scale and back down the same way, using 2 notes per position. As we do this exercise, if you find yourself getting your bow mixed up, particularly when we get to the 4s or the 8s, that's not uncommon. It happens all the time. When you're doing it at home, you can start that section of the scale again and get used to the feel of the bow moving the same amount. Then it's time to change. You won't be changing on the same note every time because you're grouping the notes in groups of 8 so that it gets offset from the scale throughout, which is why it takes 8 times before your bowing repeats. I'm going to be presenting this exercise, this scale study, with another one of my students, Molly. And you'll see us doing this exercise through everything that I just described. And I encourage you to join us. If your bow gets tangled, that's okay. Take a pause, get back on track. If you play a note out of tune, my goal with these scale studies is meditative. So if I play a note out of tune, my goal is to notice, but not try to do anything about it, just notice. And the next time through the scale, play it in tune. And if a different note or that note is out of tune that time, notice, but don't try to stop and adjust. Just notice, pay attention, and keep moving. As you play this, again, if your bow gets tangled, that's completely normal. Until you've done this exercise a number of times, you probably will get tangled up, particularly in the eighth notes. So here is the A major scale. Join us. The last exercise that I'd like to invite you to join me on in today's work is based on work by Frederick Zimmerman in his contemporary concept of bowing technique for the double bass. This is an amazing book with a lot of wonderful tools in it for developing flexibility and dexterity in string crossings and bow changes, in both in general and in relation to specific challenges of any particular piece. Underlying that concept of developing string crossings and bowing changes, for Fred Zimmerman and his student Bob Gladstone, who was my principal teacher, underlying that concept was the concept of the perfect bow change that involved the ability to change direction and change strings with no glitches, with no accents, with no hesitations, allowing the bow arm to move from one string to the next in a flowing way, so that the motion and the sound is continuous. Fundamental to that is the motion of moving the bow arm in a circular motion. It could go in either direction, but the idea that the horizontal motion of the bow is produced by circular motions of the arm. This is what allows the motion to be continuous in a sort of reverse process of what happens in a piston in a car, when the piston, because of the impetus of the spark plug, is moving down and up, back and forth, but by means of the cam is making a continuous motion of the drive shaft. This is the opposite process. The continuous motion of the drive shaft, the arm, creates a flowing back and forth motion of the hair. So I invite you to find a pencil with a still functioning eraser on one end and a flat place like a table or a countertop that you can explore some weight exercises with me. So go find yourself a pencil and then return to the video. All right, what we're going to do here is explore the maintaining of weight on your bow as you change strings and as you change bow directions. The fact that you can maintain an absolutely consistent bow weight even as you're changing the angle of your arm to change strings and changing directions. So I invite you to make a fantastic, your fantastic bow hold on the pencil with the eraser sticking out as if that's towards the tip of the bow. So this would be the tip of your bow, very short bow. Whatever your preferred bow hold is, make your excellent bow hold on the eraser. I'm going to demonstrate with a German bow hold because that's what I do the most. And then you take your imaginary bow with your bow hold and you set it with the eraser on the countertop or the table. Now, feel the weight of your arm going through either your thumb or your fingers, and feel it kind of keeping that eraser at one spot with some, you can feel the weight of your arm on the eraser. Now, feel the same weight on the eraser and the same weight on the eraser as you change your arm angle. The same weight as you change your arm angle. And feel yourself sort of wobbling that eraser as if you're moving down bow and up bow, while keeping the same weight on the pencil. That it's a good mezzo forte weight. Weight of your arm moving either through your bow hold this way, or any other bow hold that you might use, and feeling it as you change, keeping consistent as you change strings and as you change directions. Oftentimes when we lift our arm up to go to an upper string, there's a tendency to lift the bow weight, and the reverse, to drop bow weight when we're dropping our arm. But in fact, we can raise our bow to the G string and keep the bow weight absolutely consistent and lower the arm without adding bow weight. If you want to feel that bow weight, you can put the eraser on your hand and feel that the bow weight stays the same as you change direction. And you can feel that bow weight stay the same as you go from an imaginary down bow feel to an up bow feel. Wherever you are in your bow, that it doesn't ever get heavier or lighter. We'll bring this to the circle exercise that we do next. And so I invite you to explore that in the most fundamental possible way. We're just going to do what I call bow circles. And this is one where I encourage you to watch what I do with the bow circle and then turn off the video and try it on your own. It's essential that you hear your sound and what is happening in your bow stroke as you're playing this, and that's hard to do when someone else is playing with you. So this is the one exercise where doing it on your own is, in my mind, more successful. So what I do, it's just very, very simple. Pick two strings, set your bow, pick a direction, and just play. As you're doing that, and set it, and do it long enough that it becomes almost meditative again. And will vary dynamics, and will vary speeds, and will vary directions. But for now, just one time. And what you're listening for is what's happening at the bow changes. So that as you change from one direction to the other, is it smooth or does it have hiccups? That had a slight pause. That had a slight accent. That was pretty good. And it's going to be, as we do this exercise, it's not going to be perfect all the time until you've become so relaxed that all your motions come without thought and effort. Explore. Is it the change at the tip or the change at the frog that causes more problems for you? If it's at the frog, is there an accent? Or is there a hesitation? Or does it fade before the bow change? Where the bow weight does not stay the same. As you do this exercise, the goal is heightened awareness of what's happening during the bow strokes, and especially between the bow strokes. You can then vary it to start on the upper string, which turns the circle that you're moving in the opposite direction. That had a slight hesitation. That had a slight scratchiness that indicated that there was a slight change in the bow weight. That was pretty good. That was a good one. And that's going to happen. As you do this, you want to increase your internal awareness of those subtle changes as your bow changes, until everything, the concept of legato and absolutely smooth connection, becomes ingrained in your musculature. You can do it on lower strings, you can do it at different speeds, you can start and increase the dynamic. The whole point being noticing what's happening at the bow changes and are the things that go on that are not what you want to hear, specific to a particular dynamic or a particular direction, and then you discover why, what's happening in your arm. I hope that these exercises and concepts have perhaps brought you some new ideas, perhaps reconfirmed some old ideas, and given you some tools to help you take your playing to a place of comfort and relaxation that we're all striving for. Enjoy the rest of your ISB convention, and thanks for being a part of this workshop with me. Take care.